All right, so yesterday a whole lot of stuff happened at WWDC and there's a lot to talk about, so we're going to just dive right in. And when I asked in the poll if you guys wanted me to talk about the software first, the hardware, or the new chips, you all wanted software first, so today we're going to do an overview of all the software that was talked about at WWDC 2022. And then I guess later through the week we'll be going into more detail with each of them, and then of course we're going to be talking about the hardware and the chips. But for today, it's software, so let's get started. So right at the top of the event we had iOS 16, and there were quite a few changes, most of which happened on the lock screen, and there were a few other things here and there. But oddly enough, there were other things introduced with other operating systems that work with iOS 16, but we'll get more into that in a minute. But yeah, so the lock screen's been redesigned, and no, unfortunately, we don't have an always-on display with the lock screen. I was kind of hoping for that, but I think that's probably going to be something held off until the new iPhone. But what we do get is an interesting new lock screen design with customizable colors, fonts, which I never thought I'd see, and widgets. And also there's this kind of depth effect that they showed off that looked like it was only attached to things like portrait mode photos, but I actually dragged this photo in here and it actually worked just fine. I was really surprised. So it can actually be done with any photo that has a nice solid hard edge, or any photo that the, I guess, AI can determine has depth to it. So that's a neat little feature there. Or I guess because I also did it with this photo, it could have been the blue of the sky acting like a blue screen. I really don't know how it works, I just know it works and it's really cool, so that's a really neat feature. And they even give you a gallery of lock screens, very similar to how they give you a gallery of watch faces. In fact, even adding a lock screen is very similar to adding a watch face on the Apple Watch, and I gotta say, my two personal favorites right now are this one and the astronomy one. That one is actually really cool, and the way that it zooms into the Earth is really neat. And when I tried that one for the first time, it asked if it could use my location. So now when it zooms in over like the general area of where I live, which is kind of neat. It just zooms in on the East Coast. That's actually pretty cool. While the lock screens are cool and very customizable, which I love, you can also attach them to different events for focus modes. So I can have one for work or for home or for recording, and I can basically have my wallpapers and the lock screen information change as I'm moving throughout my day, which I might try. I haven't really used focus modes too much aside from here and at work, but I could try it out because, well, I've got it and I'm testing it, so we'll see how that goes. Another big focus for the day were the new sharing features, some improvements to things like SharePlay, as well as the ability to create new SharePlay events through FaceTime while on call, and they also focus pretty heavily on messages. The two new standout features for messages included the ability to rescind text messages within a certain amount of time after sending it, as well as the ability to edit a text message, which officially means that you can now edit iMessages before you can edit tweets. Yeah. Now, when it comes to those editing features, I don't know how those are going to be sort of utilized or managed, because I know a lot of people who have used text messages as sort of incriminating evidence for people, and being able to edit that can potentially cause some issues for people, I'm sure. I guess time will tell. We'll have to see as this beta keeps moving forward, but for now, it doesn't seem like there's any limit to editing it. You can still edit it after several minutes have passed, so we'll see what happens. Oh, and I almost forgot too, they did add some new features for CarPlay in iOS, and that's pretty neat. The car that I'm currently driving unfortunately doesn't have CarPlay, and the one that does have CarPlay is sort of broken. So when I get my new car, I'm definitely going to be playing around with that because it will have CarPlay, but this is sort of, it's kind of interesting. You can't tell me that Apple hasn't been trying to develop a car or some sort of car interface for maybe one of their own projects, but essentially, if a car manufacturer decides to give Apple's new CarPlay system full integration to their screens, you can not only have the display that you've always had for CarPlay, but you can also have widgets and a ton of other things just smattered across the screen. You can have anything from maps or the weather or home widgets on your dashboard. And because it's talking with these cars, because essentially from what Apple said, it sounds like it's a much deeper integration, you are actually getting all of the information from tachometer to speedometer, what drive gear it's in, all that kind of stuff on the screen through your iPhone. And it's this one big unified interface, and you can customize it to what you want. The car I'm getting does have a digital display, but it's not a digital display that I think can be customized in this way. And Apple even said that this is integration that isn't on any current car, but is coming later. But if I get my, or well, not if, when I get my GR86, if that becomes something they can update into that, I will be floored. If it's not, well, it is what it is, but still, I think it's pretty cool. And I can't use it currently, even on the car that does have CarPlay, because, well, I have analog dashes on that. But generally, iOS 16 just wasn't super interesting to me. Like, the lock screen is cool. I appreciate the sharing features, as well as things like shared albums and location-based reminders to make a shared album. That was kind of neat. And of course, the thing with editing text messages is cool. But aside from that, it's kind of just another version of iOS. I'm sure I'll find more things as I play with it, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it as I make more videos about my experiences with the betas. But for now, it's cool, but honestly, just kind of feels the same, but with a new lock screen. Yeah, sorry. And sticking with the theme of operating systems that didn't super interest me, WatchOS 9. Now, I've been using an Apple Watch since it came out, and it's been really interesting to see Apple kind of shift the focus to this general purpose watch to a very health-oriented watch with the ability to interact with other apps. And of course, the integration has been fantastic, but the main focus for a lot of these newer updates, especially with watchOS 9, have been on health. Some of the things that stood out to me were things like medication reminders, which was a pretty neat thing, as well as medication incidents. So you can actually, or interactions, I think is what they called it. But essentially, if you have a certain medication that's scheduled for a certain time, it will actually let you know if you shouldn't be taking something or can't mix these two types of medication, things like that. Kind of a neat little thing. Apparently something else that Apple's working on is the ability to detect AFib, which is kind of neat, and you can see how much of a percentage of your average heart rate is spent in AFib. Now, it seems like this is only something that can be turned on after it's been diagnosed, but it's still a cool feature nonetheless. Something else they added that I might actually try to take advantage of is the new running feature. So it will track running, but now it will actually give you your gait in a way. It'll sort of help you optimize your running pattern. Because as they explained, there was sort of a good pattern that your, I guess, center of gravity should be in, or where your hips should be. It's basically if you bounce too much when you're running, you're wasting energy, and it uses some algorithm that's way over my head to figure out what your optimal running bounce and pace should be, and it'll also give you sort of a scale on how intense your workout is. So if you want to keep it in a certain scale, you can do that as well. And then the only other thing that really stood out to me in this plethora of health features was the new feature added to the sleep tracking, which it already took them forever to add sleep tracking, but now we finally have sleep cycles. This is something that Apple has sort of dragged their feet on. I mean, hell, they dragged their feet on just adding the sleep function, but now we actually have more details in the sleep tracking. And this is something that third-party apps have had for a while. Things like Pillow have been able to use this for quite a while, but now we have it officially on the Apple Watch. So rest in peace, Pillow. Your subscription count is going to plummet after this. And lastly, of course, with the introduction of a new watchOS means there is the introduction of a ton of new watch faces, and there are a few that interest me. The one that they showed with the stretchy numbers, that was pretty cool. I don't remember what they called it. I think it was Metropolitan. That was a pretty cool one. I didn't like the colors they demoed, but maybe I'll take a look and see if there's a color pattern that I do like. Now, moving away from the watch, we're getting into the operating system that I was actually fairly interested in, the second most interested one for me, which is the new version of macOS Ace. I mean, Ventura.
Alrighty then.
Yeah, I can't take the naming of this seriously. I can't. It's now macOS Ace Ventura for me. That's it. I'm not going to be the only one to make that joke, but, well, anyway, the new version of macOS has quite a few changes. Not a whole lot to the interface, though I do really, really like the new wallpaper because it's got this like floral pattern to it, and I like the bright colors. Even though I'm usually a dark mode kind of guy, I do like this. So one of the things they talked about when getting into macOS was the continuity features. Now, continuity on Apple devices has always been really strong. Being able to copy something from your phone and paste it on your Mac, or even being able to do things as cool as universal control, which is where instead of connecting your iPad via Sidecar to your Mac, you're literally making it another display that is still an iPad and being able to drag files back and forth between the two. It's really wild, and it's always been a really cool feature. But they kind of bumped up continuity in a lot of ways, and one of the big things that they added was continuity FaceTime, where you can move from FaceTime on your phone or on your iPad to your Mac once you get home, and vice versa. And on top of that, webcam features, which when I say webcam features, I don't mean oh, it knows that you've got a webcam attached, and when you move, it'll switch to the camera on your phone. No, it uses the camera of your iPhone as the webcam. And from what I can tell, it uses the wide angle as well for center stage. That was a really cool feature that they added, and I was blown away when they showed it off. And of course, it looks like Belkin has a third-party MagSafe capable adapter that lets you use it. So I might have to try that out at some point. I'm not going to do it right now because I'm only testing the new version of macOS Ace Ventura on my server. I'm not testing it on the studio yet because, well, I actually have to get work done. So the studio is going to have to wait. All my testing is going to be done on a base model Mac Mini. Sorry. Now, aside from continuity, something else they did add that I'm actually really interested in trying out on the Mac Mini because it's connected to a smaller screen is the new Stage Manager mode. Now, what this does is this kind of takes the operating system windows that are open and separates them out into individual windows that you can manage and hop between at any given time. For me personally, I don't know how this is going to work in my workflow because I tend to work with two displays, and I can see a scenario where it would be nice to have on one screen, but on a second display, I would rather just have one or two windows open. And generally, I don't have so many windows open that they look like Craig's desktop during the keynote, but on the occasion that I do, I could see this management system being kind of useful. I don't know. This one is, at least on macOS, this feature is kind of iffy for me. It's cool, and I really like the idea behind it, but I don't know how it's going to implement into my workflow on my main machine. I could see a use case for it on the server because the display is much smaller and I do generally have more things open. But for a dual display system like my main rig, don't know about it. But it is cool to have. Now, something that I wasn't expecting to get updated, but I'm actually kind of glad they did, was Spotlight, because Spotlight's already basically the best way to search through your Mac. And I'm not saying that like it's a marketing term. I'm saying that because it is. If I ever need something, I just command space, start typing, there it is. But now it's actually using the web more. It's using more of the screen, and something that I wished they had had for a while is finally here, which is the ability to actually preview the file that you're looking for in Spotlight before clicking on it, committing to it, and diving straight into the file. So that's something I've wanted for a while. It's super nice to have. And overall, just the integration between all of these different features, from live text to web integration, all of this is really nice to have on this specific type of search engine on your Mac. So it'll be interesting to try it out. I'm really curious to see how it's going to go. But for now, I'm just excited and surprised that they actually put that much love into Spotlight. Something else they talked about that I kind of just glossed over was mail, but it was something that was at least worth talking about. You can now send scheduled emails. You can also rescind emails the same way that you can rescind text messages. And one of the other things that was kind of interesting was reminder-based emails. So if you wanted to set it up on your phone, or I guess on your Mac as well, it seems like it's something you can do on the phone as well, but you can set a reminder similar to what you can do on Outlook, where it reminds you to, well, post an email somewhere. It's neat to have, I suppose, but I don't use email on the Mac. I guess I will for the sake of testing, but generally it's my iPad or my phone. But it's nice that they showed it some love. Another app they showed some love to was Safari, which was another app I didn't think really needed any love, but they gave it to it anyway. So they gave you a supposedly faster browsing experience, even though Safari is already super, super fast as it is. And they added the ability to share web page interactions. This makes more sense with the collaboration feature they also brought out, but it seems like you can at least sort of have other people hop in as you're browsing the web and sort of share a tab if they all want to look at the site at the same time. I'm not sure what the use of this is. They kind of showed it off, but I still didn't fully understand it, so I'll have to play with it a little bit, maybe with some people who also have the beta, but I don't know. We'll see. They also introduced a feature called Passkey, and what this is a biometric lock and passcode system where you are literally just logging into something via your biometric, whether it be Touch ID or Face ID. And in the case that you don't have a Mac or any Apple-specific device that you're trying to log into, you can pull out your iPhone, start the login process through a non-Apple device, scan the QR code on your phone, and it will use the biometric of your phone to validate the login. It's a nice and easy way to make sure that your password, which really isn't a passcode, is secure, and it also means that it is immune to phishing because, well, it is not a set of numbers and letters that are stored anywhere. It is literally a biometric authentication system. That's really cool. Now, after they finished talking about Safari, they moved on to gaming, which I found kind of funny because not only do I find gaming on a Mac just kind of silly if you're really trying to do it seriously, but also I found it funny because I recently did a video talking about 4K gaming on the Mac Studio. You can check it out right over there. And my conclusion with that video was that it's possible with the right game, but without proper optimization, it's not a great experience. Well, I'm not going to say that Apple listened because I know for a fact they didn't, but they did show off some new features with their Metal API, including things like upscaling, similar to what NVIDIA's been doing with DRSS, or at least that's what it seemed like. And they even brought out one of the developers, one of the lead developers, I think he was, for The Village, the new Resident Evil game. And they showed the new Resident Evil game, The Village, playing on, I would assume it was gameplay from a Mac Studio, at least with the Ultra, because that would give the best results, but they talked about how it performs super well. And that is actually a proper AAA title, so maybe there will be some better games coming to the Mac. I can't say that with a straight face. I doubt it, honestly. I really doubt it. And after that, Craig sped off, like Quicksilver, on to talk about iPadOS. So yeah, let's talk about iPadOS. Now, to be honest, iPadOS was the main reason why I watched this event, and Apple simultaneously got me really excited for it and kind of let me down all in one event. And, well, let's go over what they talked about, and I will save my opinions for the end. So they introduced collaboration on the iPad, which is something that is supposedly system-wide, so you can use this on multiple different devices, collaborate together, similar to what you can see on things like Google Docs or even on Excel spreadsheets and Word with Office. So it's cool to see. I didn't know that this was a thing that wasn't already on the iPad, but I've also never really used this feature on any sort of document creation tool that I've used, so it could have very well been there and they just refined it, or they could have just added it because it was never there. But I don't have many friends, and I don't have any friends who I use Word documents with, so I guess that's cool. And this also had integration in with the Safari sharing thing that they talked about. Again, I need to do some more research to understand exactly what that is, but it apparently integrates with it. And while they were talking about collaboration, they brought up an app that apparently they're going to be introducing in a little while. It's later this year, apparently, which is called Free Roam. And this is just a giant virtual whiteboard for people to type things, write things, draw things. And if you need more space, you just scroll one way. If you want to focus in, you pinch to zoom. And it's just a giant idea smushed whiteboard. It's kind of cool to see that. I've never worked in a space where that's been a thing, but I can absolutely see a team utilizing something like this if they're all using some sort of Apple device like an iPad. So cool to see. I'll definitely have to try the app out when it comes out, but it was just sort of a neat little thing to see. Now, they did also briefly touch on gaming, mainly focusing on things like Game Center, as well as the fact that the new Metal 3 API is also coming to the iPadOS, but they also showed off something that I was kind of fascinated by, and I don't exactly know how this is going to work, but you can use SharePlay to split screen multiplay with some people. It was kind of an interesting idea. What it seems like is it's sort of treating the app like both players are local, but it's using SharePlay. I'm not 100% sure how that works, so don't quote me on it, but it'd be kind of cool to have like local multiplayer via SharePlay for the people who play games on the iPad. It would be kind of neat to see, I suppose. The only other gaming thing that caught my attention during this event was the background downloading API, which means that hopefully, if you're playing Genshin Impact or something like that, and there's a big update that needs to be downloaded, you can keep playing the game while it's downloading in the background, though I'm sure that's something that could have been added on PC years ago, and it's still not, so I'm not holding my breath for Genshin Impact, but hey, other apps might be able to take advantage of it, so that'd be pretty cool. Now, this next part is where Apple kind of let me down, because they were talking about desktop-grade apps, and they weren't wrong. They showed off apps that are, I guess, currently in development and features within those apps that are fully in parity with desktop applications, at least as close to in parity as you can get for an iPad. But things like customizing the top bar and things like Pages, or being able to see your file extensions in your file browser, which is not something that I should be praising them for. It should have been there from the start, but whatever. But either way, they talked about how they are putting out an API for developers to make their apps more desktop grade. And they're trying to do that on their stuff as well, which is really cool. Yet they didn't introduce any Pro apps for the iPad Pro. There's still no Final Cut. There's still no Logic Pro. what is it going to take to get these apps onto the iPad that is using the exact same chip that is in computers that can already run these pieces of software? I'm actually kind of frustrated by that. It was a big letdown not to have that available on the iPad. I was very upset by that. But it's cool at least that these apps are now getting turned into more desktop-like apps for the iPad. You win some, you lose some. And the next section and the last section was a huge win. This section of the event is where Apple almost made me forget that they didn't put Final Cut on the iPad, but I still remember. But they came close because they showed off Stage Manager, which they just introduced on the Mac, on the iPad. And it is freaking awesome. I've already been playing with it and I already love it. In fact, as I'm recording right now, my iPad is sitting in front of me with the script forward facing, and behind it in an overlapped window is the recorder that I use for my audio. You can overlap windows, you can scale windows, and they finally unlocked. They literally used the word unlocked. They didn't say enabled, they didn't say added, they said unlocked, which implies that it could have done it the whole time and they just weren't. They unlocked dual screen support. And not only are you able to put other apps over on the other screen, but you can set the orientation within your settings. You can even do things like change the scaling of the iPad so you can have a more space scaling, just like you have on the Mac, and you can do that same thing on the other display hooked up to it. It is so cool. And it just works. I'm actually kind of amazed. This is such a new feature that I was expecting it to be buggy, and it kind of is. Here's an example. But it's not so buggy that I'm afraid to use it. And they added it as sort of a menu feature that you can pull down in Control Center and turn on, and you can then turn it off again and be right back into the iPad version of every app. But I'm probably going to leave it like this because for the apps that I do want to use in full screen, like YouTube and Safari, I just make the window full size, and everything that has to do with the little Stage Manager function just goes away. It's really cool. I'm so glad they finally added this function, and well, it's a long time coming and nice to see, and I'm going to be using the crap out of it. Hell, maybe I'll even try to do a full replacement challenge where I edit an entire video, do the whole project top to bottom on my iPad Pro. Let me know if you guys want to see that in the comments. I'm actually curious now. But aside from that, there was one other thing, a very important thing, something they brought up earlier, but I saved for last because it was so important. They added a weather app to the iPad, but not the calculator app. Why do you hate me? No, obviously I'm joking. Yes, it's nice to see the weather app. I do wish they had the calculator app added, but it's just, this is a huge update for the iPad, and I cannot wait to really start diving in and using this device on a daily basis. I even have the new version of iOS running on my phone, and I am beta testing beta version 1 on my daily driver iPhone. Why? Because I am one of
The crazy ones.
So yeah, I'm going to be testing all of these devices and really trying out everything that the new versions of these operating systems have to offer. And well, that was everything. Those are all the features that I was excited for and all the things that are the most, in my opinion, most important bits of the software coming out of WWDC 2022. So stick around. We're going to be talking about things like the new software, the new hardware, and the chips throughout this week. So don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss it. Aside from that, thank you so much for watching. Leave some comments down below. I'm really curious what your all's thoughts are. I'm sure there's going to be a few of them saying it's finally time Apple got it after Android's had it for years, but whatever. Subscribe, like, comment, the whole 9 yards, and I'll see you all in the next video. Make sure to be there and have a good one.